Hey, what's up? Cole Grace here. I'm going to do a video today doing a deep dive on the subconscious mind. It's crazy. I've been doing a lot of research, constantly watching videos and brushing up on my neuroscience, mental health stuff so that I can speak on these podcasts and continue to put out content. And I was blown away by some of these subconscious mind statistics, and it all ties into things that I was saying in the past, but in a very different way. It ties it all together. So, without any further ado, I'm going to drop the first bombshell on you. Your subconscious mind is capable of processing hundreds of billions with a B of bits per second. That's what it's capable of. And on average, it is processing 11 million bits of information per second. In contrast, your conscious mind, conscious thought, I'm going to let you just throw out some numbers for yourself for a second and what you think maybe your conscious mind is capable of processing per second, bits per second. 40 to 50 bits per second. 40 to 50 bits per second out of the, you know, 11 million that's being processed by your on average. Okay, so it's 40 to 50. It's capable of the hundreds of billions that your subconscious mind is capable of. During like average um, conscious thought, you're only using on average 10 bits per second, or you're only processing on average 10 bits per second of information while using conscious thought. So that is ridiculous, if you ask me. That's crazy. And that goes into like, so if you're only processing consciously on average 10 bits per second, and there's so much available in your environment, that's where the filters come in reality, and how your thoughts and the things that build your reticular activating system, which is in your subconscious, that's how all of that kind of plays into creating your reality. So, because you perceive it and interpret it through these filters that are built through your subconscious programs. So that's the first one that was mind blowing to me when I found that. I was like, what, billion and then only 40 to 50? Like, wow, that is crazy contrast. Another one, I got a notepad here with some of these things written down. So yeah, the RS, the language of your subconscious is not the same language. It doesn't speak English. It doesn't speak Spanish. It doesn't speak verbal language very well. So the language of your subconscious is actually imagery and emotion, um, and then through the how those get programmed. So imagery and emotion, those either with repetition, sorry, or through like a high emotion, like traumatic event or something, is how these neural pathways get programmed. And to take advantage of neuroplasticity in the other direction is we're going to use repetition to reprogram it in a way intentionally. The subconscious mind, I've said this one before too, and I've like dialed the number back because I didn't really believe it, but the subconscious mind is responsible for 95 to 97% of thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and daily actions. 95 to 97% of thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and daily actions are just subconscious programs that you're running, that you built when you were, some of them when you were a child and throughout your life. You're continuously updating these programs, but the core of those programs were developed in early childhood or around highly emotional events. So that is another crazy thing, is that so much of your decisions and everything are subconsciously controlled, and they're controlled by these programs that are built and put together throughout our lives based on our experiences, based on our emotions, and based on how we felt in certain situations. Because some of these core beliefs and some of these subconscious imprints and neural pathways were created when we were pre-verbal. You know, some of these things we could be in the womb and we're attuning to our mother's nervous system, and we're aware of what's happening on the outside. People talk to their babies kick, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of arguing in the home during pregnancy that can be felt, or a dysregulated nervous system that can be imprinted at an early age, pre-verbal. And so that's what I'm saying. When you can sit there and do a positive affirmation without having any emotion connected to it, and it's just like wah 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 wah, and that's your conscious mind, and your subconscious mind is hearing, okay, cool, like I want to succeed, is what you're saying consciously, but your subconscious mind is wah 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 wah, and the emotion is I can't succeed because it's dangerous, because I'm not worthy, because whatever the block is subconsciously. So that's something else that's was insane to me. How much, like 95 to 97%. I'm only making 5% of these choices consciously. What the heck? So that's why we replay patterns. And it's also like some of these things can be imprinted on us from like generational. You know, that's how it plays out, because your mom was attuned to the nervous system of her mom at a young age, and she was going through trauma and whatever. It can be passed down without the child actually having to be necessarily traumatized. Like I don't have to be necessarily physically abused or sexually abused or verbally abused to feel that. Then with the subconscious, we develop what's somewhat known as the shadow self, or parts of ourselves that we repress due to, like, again, learned that it's not good for me to be angry, or every time I'm angry, my needs don't get met, I get in trouble, or when I'm needy and cry, you know, we don't cry in this household, whatever the case may be, I learn to tailor my persona, you know, like what I present to people. This is all part of like it's like your persona, your ego, and your shadow self, or in your shadow. So the persona is what I present to other people. My ego is like the protection mechanism and the bouncer, and then my shadow is the parts of myself that I don't accept, that I reject of myself. We've talked about that somewhat, and integrating that is important to unblocking things in your subconscious mind as well. So I got some more fun facts about the subconscious mind. Um, did you know the subconscious mind is always awake? It makes sense, right? Because we gotta breathe while we're sleeping, and all of our functions are still running. So the subconscious mind never sleeps. Said it controls 95%, 95 to 97% of your actions, like heartbeat, breathing, without you even being aware of it. Another cool thing about the subconscious is it does not differentiate reality from imagination. That's why I was saying imagery is one of the is part of the language. Imagery and emotion is the language of the subconscious. So why is that important? Well, for a long time I was doing EMDR and other modalities, and in doing those, a lot of it is to have imagine things. Imagine if it was different. Imagine that your dad didn't leave you and gave you what you needed, and that was always so hard for me, because I was like, I'm very logical, and I'm like, that didn't happen. So how is that going to help me to like think something that didn't happen happened 40 years ago? That sounds stupid. But the science part of it is that your brain doesn't differentiate between imagination and reality. And the perfect example of this is, if you've ever thought of something really disgusting or gross, and or somebody said something or made the vomit noise, and then you vomit or something, and you start to get sick, or you've watched somebody get injured on TV and you get the goosebumps and you can actually feel it, and turn your head away. Those things didn't really happen in real life, but your imagination, your body doesn't know. Your subconscious mind doesn't know. You can almost like taste things without tasting them, and into meditations and go places without actually going there. And the power in that is really crucial to understand when you're trying to reprogram your subconscious mind and you're trying to heal from some of these past experiences, because it might seem like, well, that's in the past. How am I supposed to heal from that in the past? Well, what you're doing is you're reprogramming the neural pathway, and you're removing the imprint on your neurological, on your nervous system, by using imagery and emotion to reprogram that part of your brain. And it doesn't have to be something that happened right now, in real life. It can be something that you imagined. Um, your brain is ridiculously good, fast at processing. It can perform millions of operations per second, like a supercomputer. But it doesn't operate on logic. It operates on habit and emotion. So that's where you can get into a little bit of trouble. There's a book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, by Daniel Kunanen or something like that. It's about heuristics, and what they propose is that there's like system one thinking, which is like your subconscious thinking, 95 to 97% of just making decisions, driving, breathing, blinking, things you don't really think about that much. And then there's system two thinking, which is like what you engage when you're going to buy a house and you're doing a comparison, or a car, or what you should be doing when you're trying to get into a relationship, and making major decisions where you're not making judgment based decisions off of emotion and habit and like your experiences. You are objectively looking at something and comparing it and using a different system of thought. So, but when you're using that quick judgment thought, you can get into trouble because your brain will just make associations. And if you ask somebody, do you think that General Motors is a good investment for a stock? Somebody's going to use possibly substitution in that situation because they don't have enough information to answer the actual question. And then they're going to substitute for an easier question. Do I like General Motors? And so if the answer to that is yes, then yes, General Motors is a good investment, even though I just used my emotion and habit and experience, feel my system one thinking to answer a question that I maybe should have engaged my system two thinking or said I don't know. So that's pretty interesting things. That was the book where they talked about the experiment where a gorilla, and I watched the video actually. There's like two teams passing a basketball back between each other. So there's two balls, two teams, a team in white and a team in black. And you're told to count the passes of the team in black, maybe. And then a black gorilla walks out into the middle of the basketball court and does like a little dance. And dead ass people don't see it. I seen it because I'm very hyper vigilant, but I didn't get the number of passes correct. But most of the time, people don't see this gorilla because this is your filter and all, like what I was talking about with your subconscious mind. So you have all of this information available, but your brain can't focus on all of it. So in order to, you have a task to focus on the amount of passes. So that's what your brain's filtering out all the unnecessary other things. And so you don't see the gorilla. Well, this filter with trauma and with other things can get miscalibrated. It can get, calibrated negative, where you're seeing threat in situations where there's not really threat, where you're expecting failure all the time, and then you're looking for examples of failure or examples of bad luck. It's your reticular activating system. So your reticular activating system is your filter for reality, and it gets trained by your subconscious mind to look for the things that you think about and the things that you believe. And those things are often formed in your subconscious at a young age or around like highly emotional events. And that's why we have to be very careful and monitor our belief systems, our attitudes, our self talk, and to make sure that we're not internalizing some of these programs that maybe served us at the time but no longer serve us in this moment. There's so many examples of that. Like for me, we'll get into that a little bit later when we're talking about attachment styles. All right. It's always awake, high-speed processor, no logic, just habit. It takes things literally. So the literal interpretation is why affirmations work, paired with repetition, is because even if I'm not, like I said, the imagination and everything else, if I say I am lovable, it doesn't necessarily need, it's stronger with examples of that, but it will take that literal. It won't try to put any hidden meaning behind it. So, store memory, and sometimes if it's traumatic memory, those get stored improperly and they don't get processed. I didn't research that before this video, so I'm not going to talk much about it, but that can, part of your emotions and part of the EMDR was reprocessing those stuck emotions. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it talks about that as well, about how you store these emotions in your body sometimes. So those are the interesting facts that I have about the subconscious mind, and that was leading me into doing inner child work, which, so after I figure out how powerful the subconscious mind is, then I start looking at when these core beliefs are formed from, like, I think it's 0 to 6, 0 to 5, and a lot of your brain's not fully developed, and so you're taking a lot of things personal, like your parents are fighting or whatever. You can internalize that as something wrong with you, and so you form these core beliefs from 0 to 5, and then I've been working on how to reprogram limiting beliefs by monitoring my triggers, my self-talk, and doing these inner child works meditations where I would go back and try to find certain things and beliefs that I might have formed around those events, like having surgery at a young age, parents divorcing, whatever it may be. So I went through and journaling. I talk about it in the book, and keeping different, writing out different age groups, epochs, like from 0 to 8. I wrote out, and then from like 8 to 18 or 8 to 21, and then from 21 to like 35, then 35 to whatever, I don't know what it was, 35 to 42. And I wrote out, things that happened during that time period that were difficult or traumatic or chaotic or whatever. And in mapping that stuff out, I've been able to come up with positive affirmations and areas where I have like limiting beliefs and blocks. And so I've been doing the affirmations, but I've found out that, like I said, yeah, the subconscious is literal, but it doesn't speak the same language. So I'm sitting here going wah 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 wah. So what I've learned to do, and a suggestion, is to come up with examples around my positive affirmations of examples of me being lovable, and how like animals come up to me and love me, and kids out of nowhere, you know, that I'm a child of God, and all of these examples, because that brings up imagery. Like when you think of something, when I say don't think of a pink elephant, that's exactly what I'm saying. Your subconscious mind doesn't speak English. It didn't hear don't. It just heard pink elephant, and it was like, ooh, pink elephant. So, imagery. So you can think of moments when you were lovable, think of moments when you were confident, whatever your positive affirmation is, and pair that with an emotion, and or I'm sorry, pair that with imagery. And with that imagery is usually going to also, with a memory, bring form imagery and emotion. So you can have memories and laugh and feel, feel those emotions again by reliving that memory or by engaging with that memory. So that's something else to add on to positive affirmations, is to think of examples of when you were that, what you're, I am lovable, I am confident, um, I am worthy, and in your different roles too, like as in business or in your career, as a family member, just there's different areas, financially, whatever it is in that arena that you're in. Try to engage with imagery and engage with emotion to more powerfully reprogram the subconscious mind. Also, your brain is like one of the wavelengths, I don't know exactly, in the morning, the first hour, when you wake up, and the hour before you go to sleep, you are more suggestible. So when you wake up in the morning, if you're able to do these positive affirmations, your gratitude, and some of these practices, or before you go to bed, they're a lot more powerful. Again, you pair them with emotion, you pair them with imagery, and then you do it in the hour when you first wake up or the hour before you go to bed, and repetition. And that is how you can reprogram your subconscious mind. So, in getting into that, where was I at? I was going through the childhood stuff. And when you start going through childhood stuff and your core beliefs, then you're bound to come across attachment theory and attachment styles. And those are formed from 0 to 8 years old. And they have a lot to do with how you relate to the world in many different ways, not just relationships. It's actually really crazy. It's my new obsession. And um, so attachment theory, and there are 4 different types of attachment styles that are recognized. One of them is secure, and 3 of them are insecure. So the one obviously is secure, and that is when you're able to strike a good balance between wanting connection, doing it in a healthy way, and not fearing it. Then there is the anxious attachment style. I think it's anxious ambivalent. Or just forgive me if I'm a little bit off, but I'm pretty on. So this is the other one's anxious attachment style. And the anxious attachment style is you deeply crave connection, but you also highly fear abandonment. So in this style, you'll likely not have a lot of boundaries, or you'll make excuses for your partner because you desperately want to keep the relationship. You don't want to lose that relationship. And so you'll abandon yourself a lot of times, just to anxiously try to make the other person happy, and not be abandoned. Then you have avoidant, and avoidant is someone who is also afraid of abandonment, but their coping mechanism is to not desire emotional connection, and to avoid it, and to stay away from it. So this one is if you're going to have someone who maybe a little hot and cold, or maybe not even hot, but somebody who avoids conflict, doesn't like to, or doesn't have really great conversation skills, and is, if they are in a relationship, is constantly looking for reasons to leave that relationship. And they might seclude themselves and isolate themselves quite a bit. Then there is this fourth style, which is called disorganized or fearful avoidant. And this one is like an interplay between anxious and avoidant. So what happens in this one is it's somebody who deeply craves emotional connection on one hand, but they're also deeply afraid of emotional connection on the other hand. So it leads to this where I'm really maybe seeking, the person's really seeking out connection in a relationship. And then when they get the relationship, they're like, what have I done? I got to get out of here. This is crazy. This is, go from one extreme to the other. Like, this person's my soulmate to this person's the worst person on the planet. And it's very confusing for the person, but it's also confusing for the person that they're with in all these styles, really. So the anxious is like people pleasing, nice guy, no boundaries type stuff. And I thought that that's what I was when I first started looking at the attachment style stuff a couple years ago. So I've been working on that, and I've been doing pretty decent in that aspect, I believe. I haven't really dated all that much, but long term. But I've had a couple here and there. But what I've realized was that I am fearful avoidant, or I am disorganized attachment style. And so it's not just the nice guy, people pleaser, lack of boundaries. It's also the desire to push away and to push people away from me when they do get close, and not let people get past a certain point. And somebody pointed that out. I was like, well, that was very avoidant behavior. And I was like, what? I'm anxious. What? And then my whole everything just went lulu. And I was like, oh no, what have you done? Like, your whole life, my whole life. This is, the person on the video was also saying this person likes nature. They probably have an artistic side, maybe have a poetry book. They really love animals, probably maybe even more than people sometimes. They probably live in a secluded area. They may have a history of trauma beyond just childhood trauma, war veteran. I was like, you're just sitting here naming off everything about me. And so what happens, it doesn't have to be abuse that causes this type of attachment style. For me, what it is chaos, a chaotic early childhood. And so that involves, like I've talked about before, my dad being an addict and alcoholic at the time when I was born, and beyond, even into past the divorce. I was born in Houston, Texas, and within 6 weeks I had my first surgery because I was malnourished and couldn't hold food down. So I had pyloric stenosis and I had a stomach surgery. My mom was very nervous, dysregulated nervous system at the time, very young, not in her home state, with my dad, who is somehow, now they have a child and unable to buy diapers, but he's working and, doesn't understand, incongruent, very naive. But she's getting upset and arguing, believes she has an anxious attachment style, which is why she was slow to leave and not have definitive boundaries. And my dad has what I would say maybe is an avoidant attachment style. And they say that anxious and avoidant attract each other, so that makes sense. My dad would always run away from the problems, but there was always arguments from the time probably when I was in the womb. And so as a child, as a young child, when there's two adults arguing and screaming and yelling at each other, it doesn't mean that I'm in danger, but it feels like I'm in danger. Imagine being like in a room with two gorillas that are like getting all anxious, getting all hyper, and getting all looking like they're mad at each other. And you're just kind of like, as an adult, like, dude, you guys need to calm down. If you guys start fighting, this is going to be crazy. Like, no. And so you get this real fear inside of you, even if it's not a physical fight, even if it's just a um, verbal argument. So there was a lot of arguing when I was young, from 0 to 4, when my parents were still married, my mom and dad. 6 weeks old, had the surgery. 6 months old, moved back from Texas with my mom. She left my dad. That's it. I'm done. But he talked to her, got her to take him back. He moved back to Michigan too. And I think 0 to 4, I don't know how many times we moved. I think we might have moved 10 or more times from 0 to 4. And we're at my great grandma's house and different grandma's houses. But my great grandma used to beat my ass and tie me up into bed sheets when I would act up, and like I'd just pass out in the bed sheets screaming, and I couldn't move, like straitjacket. So that happened quite a bit, and in that situation, what you're going through is that a caretaker, somebody who's where you're supposed to get your needs met from, is also a source of fear and pain. And that's happening with, or there's, so that's happening in that situation. And then also to help create this attachment style is chaos, or a lot of different environments, which is causing me to be hyper vigilant as a child and constantly read my environment for safety. That's part of this attachment style, is a hypervigilance. And so you don't necessarily believe that you're safe, and you're constantly looking for cues in your environment. You're highly aware of that stuff, and you're highly aware of facial expressions and repetitions and patterns, because you're trying to figure out, put rhyme or reason to, like, if dad's going to be mad today, or mom, or whatever the situation is. And so for me, 0 to 4, live in all different places. Mom and dad divorced at 4, and mom and I and my sister, my mom had my sister when she's a year and a half younger than me. Then we divorced, and my dad didn't have much financial support. We lived in a really inner city part of Pontiac, Michigan, where a car was shot through the trunk and a stray bullet. House was broken into while my mom was in it, and she had a knife and somebody was in her closet, and luckily nothing happened, but some crazy stuff. And my mom is 24, maybe, I think. Um, and she's supporting us by herself. She's not getting that much help. Her parents live further away, way up, and probably 8 hours away. And she's not really getting food stamps as much. And then she has a surgery where she had to have a pretty major surgery, part of her colon removed. So that was kind of wild. And then I broke my elbow at 6, and then there was a lot of medical stuff. My mom also had a cyst removed and different things. Lots of different caregivers too. So like babysitters and grandmas, and lots of different. So that's where I'm attuning my manipulation style of how I'm going to get my needs met. That's basically what we all do, at a basic level, is manipulate the world to get our needs met. But as a kid, I'm trying to get my needs met, but it's all by all these different people. So I'm learning these different styles of how to, it's not just learning my mom or learning my mom and dad. It's learning all these different people. And so I'm developing this attachment style that's disorganized, that's not really, it's fearful and it's avoidant. So it's anxious on one hand. It doesn't, it wants to get its needs met and it wants connection, but on the other hand, it's scared that the same person that's going to meet my needs is going to hurt me. So that creates a really crazy dynamic. You can't trust your environment. I can't trust myself, and I can't trust other people. It's just this wild ride, and it's justified in your brain. But it's really a trigger. It's like, oh my God, she wore red shoes. She's cheating on me for sure. It's like, what? I'm like, no, it's not an actual example, but it goes very quickly to, instead of communicating my needs and being like, hey, what's going on? Or when you do this, it makes me feel like this. Or, hey, I'm starting to kind of feel a little like pulling away, like my triggers hitting me, or I'm feeling a little smothered. Whatever it is, I just kind of don't say shit. And then eventually, like, you should know what you're doing. And I'm out in the name of having boundaries. So that sucked to learn about, but it's something that I'm working on, and it was really hard because I thought I was anxiously attached and was working on that, and then it turns out I'm like, oh man, craziness. So yeah, how did I get? Okay, so that's how I started to develop this anxious attachment style, was through chaos in early life, which created a need for hypervigilance to survive in my environment, right? And then at 8 years old, my stepdad comes into my life, and he probably at 6 years old, but at 8 years old, they married. And my stepdad is a police officer, and he's very hypercritical. He's stern, and I'm not able to be myself around him. Like, I don't know, little stupid stuff. So I just learned to walk on eggshells around him and not have friends over, and just, it is what it is. That's how it works. And then him and my mom fighting a lot. Mom peeling out of the driveway, or just feeling scared a lot again. And so with that, him and her fighting a lot, reinforcing like the relationship dynamics that I'm used to seeing, threats of divorce, and him being avoidant as well. So he'll get in a big blowout fight and he goes up north and runs away for a while, and mom's anxious and, talking to us about it and crying and emotional. And so those moments also where I have to maybe try to emotionally regulate my mom, like when her dad passed or when she had some of those surgeries. I took it upon myself to be there for her in an adult way, like helping to try to manage her feelings. So it wasn't like she asked me to or forced me, whatever. It was just something that I took upon myself. Like, and at a young age, you're the man of the house. So like a lot of that stuff contributes to this attachment style as well. What else? So then 8 to 18, I'm living at home with my mom and stepdad. Then I went to Northern Michigan University for a semester so that I could drink my face off and not do good and fail out. That was stupid. Came home. I went up there, signed up for the military in July of '01. And then I went to school for that first semester. September 9/11 happened, and then I failed out of, or I didn't, I got a 1.1 GPA and was on academic probation after my first semester. So I was home before 2002, before January, and then wasn't going back up to Northern. Then I went to boot camp, and lived in an apartment and with my parents a little bit, my mom and stepdad a little bit more until I went to Iraq in 2005. And we took the long way to get there, but this point is that I was going to make is the hypervigilance that I developed as a child in my chaotic environment. It served a purpose in that environment. And then this is something funny too. My basketball coach, I just remembered this. We were having a meeting one time, and he was like, "When we run set plays, you're not, it's not you're bad, but you're not the greatest. Like you just go through the motions, or you're all right, But when it's helter skelter, when it's chaos out there, that's when you shine. You're like the man." And I'm like, it didn't make sense then, but now it's like, yeah, that's my shit. And chaos, I'm out there like conducting. This is it. Oh, you guys are what? This is the stuff. This is where I'm used to. I thrive in that. That's why I was such a good soldier, because I'm my nervous system feels comfortable or natural in a chaotic environment. And this is a lot more chaotic, obviously, than my childhood, but the hypervigilance that I need to perform the job that I performed, that's baked in from my childhood. So I'm really good at that. And then, but what that did, because I didn't know where it was even from or what any of this, is that it reinforced it. It like compounded it. So I had developed this hypervigilance, not trusting the environment, not trusting, things aren't as they seem. One minute it could be this, one minute it could be that. And I'm in like a similar type environment with the combat, and in that aspect, in the terms of not knowing what to expect, and being very chaotic and unpredictable. So that reinforced the hypervigilance, that that's how you stay safe, that's how you stay alive, and that was already pretty powerful from my childhood. And then now that's why I smoke weed. I don't know, I'm really working through this, is because I have a high hypervigilance that I've been working on for years. That's like, I don't feel, it's hard for me to feel calm, it's hard for me to relax, it's hard for me to sit down without finding something to do. And like I said, I've been working on that, but it's I'm finding out like now, because of my attachment style, because of my early childhood, the hypervigilance was a survival mechanism, and then it was also a survival mechanism in Iraq. So that's why, with high emotion and repetition, it's deeply programmed into my subconscious. So in unwiring these things, I'm having to use imagery and emotion and repetition. And what I'm doing is, there's these things called inner child meditations. And the inner child meditations, they're guided, and they take you back through to talk to your younger self. And you can pick, the topic, the age, the whatever. Sometimes I've just sat there and held the baby. And you know just I'm thinking, I'm not speaking out loud, I'm thinking things, and the baby's not responding. I'm just telling it how much I love it and I'm sorry, and you know remembering things is crazy. I also talked about this in another video, that my random memories of childhood weren't very prevalent or frequent. I would have to intentionally think about my childhood, and I could conjure up a memory. But it didn't come naturally. And this was after I got back from Iraq. I talked to my mom about it many times. And I always thought it was because of how impactful Iraq was, that just kind of like where I got stuck at, and that I don't have other thoughts. But really, I repressed and dissociated. That was something that I started doing at a young age. And I did that again, another survival technique that I used again in Iraq. And so that's where I don't feel comfortable in my body. I don't feel comfortable like just at rest. And so the dissociation from the childhood stuff, like when I was young and parents would start fighting and then I would just, go to my own little world. That's part of the avoidant part of my attachment style. And then the people pleaser, do whatever I can to make the person happy, because that's how I get my needs met, was displaying parts of my anxious part of the disorganized attachment style. And so there's lots of contributing factors, but a main part of it is like inconsistency and chaos during young childhood that can lead to this type of an attachment style. And how that plays out in relationships is that one minute I'll be really into somebody and be like, yeah, I like her, she's meets all the check marks, más o menos, and she's a great woman. I enjoy spending time with her, and then something will happen, and it'll be like, yeah, no, nope, I gotta go. This is it. This is over. And sometimes it'll be something that happened, and I just am very. I was looking for something to happen, and then once it happened, like there it was. Yep, that's it. And then I'm very adamant on it. I'm not like wanting to discuss it. I was just looking for something to pull the exit. And so it can be difficult because I am confused myself sometimes of why I feel that way. And how to not hurt other people, not hurt myself. Another thing about the fearful avoidant or the disorganized attachment style is that we tend to attract each other. So disorganized tend to attract other disorganized, and that can be problematic because, like I said, it doesn't. It's not malicious. I'm not like playing games and pushing people away and then pulling them back in. It's a very intense feeling inside of my body that also it's not just me. Like I'm not making things up. Sometimes there are issues that need to be addressed, but I'm not communicating and addressing them well. I'm communicating and addressing them in an avoidant way, or I'm communicating and addressing them in an anxious way. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that like some of the stuff that I was upset about in the relationship was just conjured up. No, there was something happened, but again, it's like a trigger. I went above and beyond. I went overboard with it. I was like, oh, nope, there it is. I knew it. And again, that's your reticular activating system, your filter for reality, your subconscious, right? So my subconscious, from repetition, from emotion, is expecting to be abandoned or hurt. I have these beliefs like, yeah, okay, we like each other now, but what about 5, 10 years? Somebody can hurt you at any time. Somebody can, seemingly walk away from what I've seen in my life and from what I've experienced. It's not safe. And so, with those beliefs, my reticular activating system is looking for supporting evidence of that. And it's self sabotage. So, that is where I'm trying to go back and reprogram that subconscious mind to feel safe, to understand that I can trust people, and to rewire all those negative beliefs and thought patterns that are that are playing out in my reality and creating the exact things that I fear. That's the bad part about it, is that you think you have control, and so you employ all these strategies to avoid something or to get something, and what you end up doing is pushing that thing away. So it can it's this double-edged sword that lies in the subconscious and that is very hard to talk to because, like I said, it's like speaking Spanish to a German with a, I don't know, English translator. You're not gonna, you just want Charlie Brown. And so a lot of these times it's like, why do I clearly want this thing, but then I keep finding ways to mess it up? Why do I outwardly want love, but then when I get it, I'm scared shitless? Yeah. So that's why I have to integrate and align my subconscious with my conscious mind and my shadow. And I have to be able to speak the language of my subconscious so that it's, imagine yourself bungee jumping and you're just like trying to logic your way through your fear. Well, so many people bungee jump a year. You're more likely to die in a car accident than you are on a bungee jump. And look, those people that went just before you made it, and hundreds of people have made it this year. Everything's fine. Your body just heard wah, 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 wah. It's like, dude, I'm even more freaked out now. I don't even know what you just said. This is crazy. What are you doing? Why are you trying to, you know, don't talk to me. I'm afraid. Now, if you were to imagine yourself bungee jumping safely and use imagery and emotion of how it will feel when you do bungee jump successfully, um, you have a lot better of a chance of calming yourself down because you're speaking the language of your subconscious and you're not just trying to logic English your way out of a emotional imagery problem, if that makes sense, hopefully. But yeah, this is some cool shit. And I hope that you learned something. As always, I love you guys and wish nothing but the best. Please like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and have a wonderful day.